Happy Monday. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid, where it is Masters Week here on our network. But before we get to the golf course, got to hit on the college basketball court. What an exciting finish to the women's college basketball season. And tonight, on the men's side, they will finish it off between UConn and Purdue, two very deserving teams with an interesting point spread, which we will review. Kyle Irving will be with us here on the show. We'll also have Jacob Kamaker breaking down everything happening in college hoops, not to mention Coach Young will be with us coming up in about 30, 40 minutes from now. We're going to go over all the player props. I mean, this could be the last time that we even have player props in college basketball with all this new litigation coming in. So stay on the grid for that, as we got you covered here on NewsWire. And by the way, I did not think here on the show, I thought the first thing we'd be talking about was that exciting game last night as South Carolina wins the national championship. And I'll get to that here in a second, but I'd be burying the lead if I didn't mention that during the national championship, we get this announcement, or we get these rumors that John Calipari is leaving Kentucky, like out of nowhere. I mean, I guess we should have speculated this a little bit, signing a 5-year deal to go to Arkansas in the SEC. My goodness, a rival. Now, he, of course, won a championship at Kentucky. He took them to 4 Final Fours, but they had some recent struggles in the tournament. They didn't get out of the first round since 2019. And now Kentucky has an opening, and Arkansas has Coach John Calipari going into next season. That is not something that usually happens. And I am sure college sports not really happy that this took away a little bit from the women's final, although it was awesome. South Carolina, Iowa going head-to-head here. Caitlin Clark, absolutely fantastic, going bananas. But one person, man, woman, I mean, I guess one horse could win a race, but one human cannot win by themselves. So the Gamecocks win the game 87-75, and Caitlin Clark goes down in her final game at the University of Iowa. Final Four's most outstanding player, Camila Cardozo. She should be an early pick in the upcoming WNBA draft. 15 points, 17 rebounds. And by the way, Clark played her final college basketball game and ended with, guess how many points? Almost 4,000. That is incredible. 3,951 points for Caitlin Clark, who could play anywhere she wants in the future. And congrats on a great career. I'm going to talk about her, by the way, coming up a little bit later in the show. Now, for those of you who have the itch to potentially wager on the final game of the college basketball season, here are the odds as it stands. Now, you see some 7s and some 6.5s. This is FanDuel currently right now. UConn, 6.5-point favorites to cover and minus 300 to repeat on the money line as national champions. And by the way, the total is 145.5. Now, the game will be played this evening, and it's going to be a late night for those of you who love hoops. 9:20 p.m. Eastern start in Glendale, Arizona. And Purdue, of course, seeking their first national title. And this is the Boilermakers' first appearance since 1969, when they lost to UCLA. And the last back-to-back champion, of course, was the Florida Gators, 2006 and 2007. As far as next year is concerned, over on ESPN Bet, South Carolina is the favorite again to win. And UConn is 4-1. LSU is 5-1. NC State is 8-1. Anthony Davis, by the way, last night in the NBA exits with another eye injury, and Davis and the Lakers lost 127-117, snapped a 4-game winning streak, dropping them to 45-34 and number 9 in the Western Conference, so play-in territory. Davis went to the locker room, and we'll see what ends up happening with them in the future. LeBron has been suffering with the flu, by the way. Also, in the NBA yesterday, multiple comeback wins on Sunday. The Clippers defeated the Cavs. LA and Dallas were down by 20 points before they came roaring back. Stars last night. Paul George of the Clippers, 37 points, 7 assists, 11 rebounds. Luka, 37 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds. Incredible night for college and pro basketball. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to guess, for those of you who even follow Major League Baseball, you had never heard this name, Ronel Blanco, pitcher on the Houston Astros. First start of the season, makes history, pitches a no-hitter. Coming off that last start last week, he goes 5 hitless last night against the Texas Rangers. 14 consecutive innings, 44 outs without allowing a hit. That's the best start to a season since 1961. The Astros, behind a Yordan Alvarez 3-run home run, defeated the Texas Rangers by a final score of 3-1. Now, a lot of talk in Major League Baseball about all of these injuries, and another one has popped its ugly head. This is the arm, unfortunately, the right arm, the throwing arm of Spencer Strider. They placed him on the 15-day injured list. He has apparently, according to doctors, a sprained ulnar collateral ligament in his right elbow. No decision yet on Tommy John surgery, although he is going to be out for an extended period of time, no question. Now, the future of baseball and potentially the postseason was on display on Sunday and Saturday as well, as the Pirates and Orioles played a fantastic series. Pittsburgh gets a win in a Gunnar Henderson error at the end of the game. Could have been a double play, but instead the Pirates walk off 3-2 the final. They're 8-2 for the first time since 2018. So congrats to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Also, the Miami Marlins picked up their first win of the season yesterday. They started 0-9. Jazz Chisholm hit a 3-run home run, and so did Nick Gordon. And they beat the St. Louis Cardinals by a final of 10-3 amidst a report yesterday that the Marlins over the winter basically tore up the contract of Skip Schumacher, had an option for next year and no longer has one. So he'll be a free agent at the end of the season. All right, now a crazy finish at the Texas Open on the verge of the Masters coming up this week. And this gentleman who I'd never heard of going into the tournament, Ashke Bhatia, earns a master spot in a playoff. He's just 22 years old and a lefty. A late run from Denny McCarthy. He wins the Valero Texas Open, and he almost ran away with the tournament until the end. But congrats to him, and we'll probably see him in the upcoming Masters this week. We'll see if he could get it going. As you can see, lefty there in the picture. You don't see that often. Tiger Woods, by the way, said he's going to play in the Masters, barring any setbacks over the next 3 to 4 days. We're going to cover this for you on NewsWire every day, starting tomorrow here on the show. Patriots have signed Kyle Duggar to a 4-year, $58 million contract. Great defensive player, playing almost 100% of the snaps for the Patriots. One of the bright spots in a tough season. 343 tackles, 9 interceptions over the course of his career. Also, the Chicago Bears are hosting Marvin Harrison Jr. for a pre-draft visit, presumably. They're supposed to be taking, I guess, Caleb Williams with the number 1 pick. Maybe that will change. It could end up being Marvin Harrison Jr. But again, it is speculation season. And as soon as we turn the page from tonight's college basketball championship, and then even further on, we're going to have and we'll be right back. I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16 seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's take a look back at this weekend's final four games and see if we can pick a winner in tonight's game. Although UConn has been favored and covered in every game in the NCAA tournament, Jacob Kamaker is with us. Jacob, what's interesting, I think, is that a lot of people on a much smaller level probably are going down to tonight's, I think, final score for their bracket, because UConn, of course, was the most picked team in every bracket across the country. But that's probably not going to be good enough, I would say, to get you your win in your bracket unless you come up with like a very close final score tonight. So I find that fascinating as well.
Yeah, we're going to see those tiebreakers come into effect. They don't usually. Usually there's enough separation in the bracket, but feels like it's been a long time since we've had the clear-cut favorite going into the tournament really make a nice long run and not have any sort of scares. Like UConn, as you mentioned, they've dominated. They've covered every single game. They've beat their toughest opponents. And even in the Final Four against Alabama, it was close early, but UConn just eventually was able to pull away because of their size, their depth, their three-point shooting. They really are the whole package. And I think they got a great matchup in terms of making an entertaining game against Purdue. I think this is going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, I do too. But before we go forward, let's go back here a little bit and let's focus on Purdue. They beat NC State pretty convincingly, 63-50. It seemed like the Wolfpack just kind of ran out of gas finally in the NCAA tournament. Edey had a nice game, 20 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. Lance Jones had 14. Fletcher Lawyer also had 11 points in this game. Not the most exciting finish. And honestly, Jacob, you kind of got to halftime in this one as I was watching, and I was like, all right, Purdue is the right side here. Were you impressed with that performance, or was it more of NC State running out of gas?
I think it's a little bit of both. I'll say it's impressive for Purdue for one reason. I mean, they held a team to 50 points in the Final Four. It's not easy to do, even if you're playing a team that's running out of gas. And this is kind of what I expected would happen. I thought Purdue would have the big edge defensively because you have Zach Edey as the anchor, and he can take away some of those shots that DJ Burns would normally be able to bully his way into. That was the bigger issue I thought that was going to be the case for NC State in this one. That kind of ended up happening. And DJ Horn did his best to try and spark the offense as much as he could, but he just wasn't efficient enough and had to take probably too many shots. It was a bad matchup for NC State's offense, and we saw that come to fruition. And credit to Purdue, though. They really did everything that they needed to do to take care of business and not make that game closer than it should have been.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess that's a really good point here, is that holding any team to 50 at that level in that game has to be given credit. So let's do that with Purdue. On the flip side, I mean, look, Alabama hung in for a bit, but, really in the end, Connecticut once again proved they are the best team in the country, which is why we'll get to it, but they're pretty big favorites for a national championship game tonight. Castle and Klingon led the way, 21 and 18 respectively. Cam Spencer at 14. and then some other contributors, Caravan, Newton, 14 and 12 points apiece there for the Huskies. So, look, I think Alabama, Jacob, basically came in with the game plan as they did in all the other games and basically say, we're not going to change anything that we're doing. Let's try and do it to UConn. And then they ran into this buzzsaw. They ended up losing by 14. And the Huskies basically have not had a down half in the NCAA tournament. And so I guess that's the dynamic that Purdue is going to have to face tonight.
Yeah, you look at their worst halves in the tournament, you might say, oh, first half against Illinois, their offense wasn't good, but they held Illinois to 23 points. And second half of that game, they had that 30-0 run. And then against Alabama kept it close in the first half. They were making a lot of their three-point shots, getting open looks early, and kind of looking like they were going to challenge UConn. But then in the second half, UConn's defense kind of buttoned up a little bit, and UConn continued to make shots. I believe they shot similar percentages from three-point range. And if you can do that against Alabama, who under Nate Oates has taken a lot of threes and plays a high up-tempo offense, a little out of control at times, you're going to be able to force them into some bad shots or some mistakes. And UConn kind of was able to do that. And at the end, Donovan Clingan just had that height advantage in the post and just used it. And he had some pretty insane dunks and layups and everything. So it was an impressive showing from UConn, and they look like the team to beat. And now it's up to Purdue to find a way to do it.
Yeah, no, it is. And tonight's odds, as we just saw, 6.5. I saw 7 on some spots. I think you could still get 7 if you really hunt for it tonight, maybe on one of the sites. I don't know if it's FanDuel, DraftKings, or anywhere else. But as we're showing you there, 6.5 is the number there. Total 145.5. You know, I'm tempted, Jacob, maybe you tell me if I'm wrong here. I've been kind of wrong. I was great in the tournament up until they got to toward the end. I keep taking the points. It's just not working out. I am tempted again. I don't know why. Call me crazy to take Purdue tonight and hope they keep the game close. The other part of this is that there's no way I'm going over with the way Purdue played in their last game. If they play that kind of defense against UConn, they may not win, but I could see this game being in the 60s.
I 100% agree with you. I would take the under in this game, and very specific reason for that. Both of these teams have dominant big men, Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan, and they are going to be able to get some close looks at the basket. But really, for the first time in this tournament, they're going to be going up against really similarly sized guys with NBA potential. So Zach Edey's 7'4". We know he's a monster, and he's going to. I thought NC State did a decent job slowing him down, and slowing him down was a 20-point double-double, which is insane to think about from that perspective. But Donovan Clingan should be able to play at least some better defense on Zach Edey just because of his size. And then on the other end, Clingan's not going to have those easy looks at the hoop or those easy dunks or those easy boards that he might have. So I think that battle is going to kind of muck up the offenses for both teams earlier. And then we'll sort of see how it plays out as they have that feeling out period the first 10 minutes of the game. Then it might get a little bit higher scoring, but I still think it's going to be in the 60s, like you said, because I think the defenses or the big man defense early in the game are going to have a big impact.
Yeah, I do too. And Edey's props, sort of like Caitlin Clark, incredible tonight. 36.5 points with points and rebounds tonight. Now, again, this is not just points. It's points and rebounds. This is still a big number, Jacob. Think about it. Edey goes for 20 and 10, and you lose if you go over tonight. Now, I know for Purdue to win, this probably has to come in, though, right? I think that probably has to be. I mean, it's sort of strange here. We're kind of down to a few teams, both on the men's and women's side, where it's one dominant player playing against another, and we'll see what happens tonight.
Yeah, I think you have to go. If you think UConn's going to win the game, you have to go under on Edey, and if you think Purdue's going to win, you probably have to go over, because if Edey gets 20 and 10 in this game, I think UConn's going to win, and that's why I'm going the under. I do think UConn's going to emerge as the winner of this game, but like I said, I think both big men are going to slow each other down early in the game and kind of have that feeling out period where they're like, all right, I'm against a guy who's similar to my size for the first time. How do I deal with this? So I think that will keep Edey under. Just like you said, it's a huge number, 36.5, and maybe he'll get it, but I'd stick with the under in this one.
And so do you like the over on Clingan because of that? Is that correlated here at all with his props or no?
So obviously this is a lower number, so I like it a little bit more than Edey, but I might stay away from this one because I think he's going to get slowed down by Edey too. So I think you're going to see more like blocks of the guys, or these little hook shots that don't go in, and maybe the guys get the rebounds too. Maybe Edey gets a rebound, maybe Clinton gets the rebound if that happens, but. So often in the college game, we see it just glance off the rim and go just a completely different direction because of the spin on the ball. So I'm probably more apt to go over with Klingon, but I might go under on both of them, as strange as it sounds.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fascinating game, and I think I'm with Jacob. I'm aligned on unders. Nobody wants unders with props, with scores, with totals, but I think that's what we're in store for tonight, Jacob. So no fun unless you are cashing in at the end. But Jacob, great stuff as always. And great to catch up with you. I guess we move toward the NFL draft when I see you next week. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks, Greg. Take care.
All right, Jacob Kamaker from Sporting News. All right, coming up next, Matthew Waters is with us to go over the very latest on sports betting around the country. You can read more about him and everything going on at LegalSportsReport.com. And then Coach Young is in the house. He's got some predictions for tonight. We'll also talk about the impact of Caitlin Clark in basketball. We'll be right back. I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Exciting Monday with Matthew Waters to go over everything happening in sports wagering. In fact, we're going to get an update on a state that we don't talk about all that often, in Nebraska. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. But Matt, first, let's start off with PrizePicks and relocating their headquarters. And, you know, we've heard a lot of discussion about companies like PrizePicks before and sort of what the future may potentially hold for them. What do you make of this relocation to Atlanta, a place where sports betting is not legal, but perhaps daily fantasy rolls on?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Craig. So PrizePicks has always been located in Atlanta, and this is just a bigger footprint for them. But you're right when you say, you know, we've heard a lot about these kind of companies, and you wonder what their future might be. Well, PrizePicks must be pretty confident in their future if they're moving into a $25 million, 33,000 square foot headquarter in Atlanta. They plan to add 1,000 jobs over the next 7 years. That is a really forward-looking talk for a company that has had headaches, we'll say. You think about how many states have said, you know, that fantasy sports has to be player versus player, not player versus house. They paid $15 million to New York for operating without a license. They pulled out of Florida. There are plenty of other states that are offering cease and desist. And somehow in the middle of this chaos, PrizePicks is like, yeah, you know what? A new property right now sounds great. So look, I think if out of all of the companies that are kind of caught up in this DFS next generation shuffle, PrizePicks is definitely one of the ones that should be around for a while. They have a product that people like, and now if they get into sports betting, that's one thing, right? But they could choose to stay fantasy and try to perfect their product and the user versus user stuff and get all those wrinkles out of the system. But yeah, Georgia is an interesting one, Craig, because like you said, they don't have the sports betting. And this year already, they were trying to get fantasy sports carve-outs in the sports betting bill, should that have passed. So I think that definitely you're going to see some lobbying in Georgia to keep fantasy games rolling the way that they have been. But look, this is a big deal to Georgia. It got an official release from the state, and Governor Kemp commented on it. So big dedicated move here for PrizePicks to be moving into just a huge facility, a lot of money behind it, a lot of jobs they say is coming. And it's just, I don't think that's necessarily something we were expecting from a company that has been rattled around like a pinball the last 12 months or so.
Yeah, well, they obviously feel confident that they're going to be able to continue to operate their business. Either that or it's a great real estate investment. Yeah. One of the two, man. I'm not sure which. We'll figure that out. Okay, so all right. So Nebraska, that's a new topic for us here. I feel like we haven't touched on that. We're always looking for these states that are, looking to legalize sports betting to see where things are at and get through the legislature here. And our next focus here is Nebraska. So let's break it down pretty clearly for our viewers and our listeners on SportsGrid Radio and everywhere else. Is this a possibility? Do you see this as progress, or is this just a faction of people saying, hey, we'd like to have sports betting in Nebraska?
You know what? I think there is a pretty good movement here for online sports betting in Nebraska now, Craig. We do have retail sports betting already at a couple of properties. And naturally, the folks that already have the retail sports books are the ones saying, well, hey, let's push this online. Let's get a little bit more here. So we have Lance Morgan, the CEO of Warhorse Gaming, and handles the casino operations for the Ho-Chunk Indians up there. And he basically said, look, we have 57% support, but we heard from these sports betting operators that they don't want to fund the push for this right now. And look, Morgan said, according to Star Journal, the Nebraska Star Journal, would cost about $5 million to $7 million to get this off the ground. And I wasn't very familiar with the laws that Nebraska has around its referendum, Craig, but they only need a simple majority, but they need certain percentages. They need like 5% from a third. They need 5% signatures from a third of all counties. There's 93 counties in Nebraska. I don't know. It was really kind of complex trying to break that down. But simple majority. So whenever you see a simple majority, that's, it's great for a referendum. But yeah, Nebraska is one of those states where you kind of scratch your head and you're like, yeah, why aren't they farther along in the process? Like I said, they've had retail sports betting for a little bit here. My guess with Nebraska and all the other states that are still lingering out there, most of them anyway, I should say, there's tribal issues. Whenever you try to get something in the legislature that is really just a tribal activity, tends to be an issue there. It tends to be some discussions that need to happen, and it doesn't always go the way that everybody thinks. So Nebraska is not looking like it'll be on the 2024 ballot. 2026 is possible. And again, it's a shame because you do have that majority that Morgan is saying they have, that 57%, but it's just I think it's just a little too close to call in Nebraska, and the books don't see the point in putting the money behind it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Okay, so let's close out here with a report from the tribal gaming entities on sports betting. Now, we also have to use the caveat is this is their report. This is what they are reporting in terms of revenue and some of the details surrounding it. I'm not saying that we don't get all of those details, but they give us what they give. And what I found really interesting about part of this report is it includes when bettors reinvest their winnings. Doesn't talk about anybody losing, only reinvesting their winnings. But Kambi is now a big part of their sportsbook operation. And so for people unfamiliar with who Kambi is, I know we've talked about it here before, let's catch them up. And also anything interesting that you read in this report.
Yeah, so it looks like the same thing jumped out to both of us, Craig. But yeah, Kambi, they have a number of tribal partners across the U.S., and so they're getting this data raw, and they're putting it together in this report. And so we do get a little bit of an insight because we don't hear the tribal numbers from sports betting so often. What I liked, what I saw was 128% handle growth, which is always good, and that's on par with what we're seeing in newer states that have launched recently. Also, 48% casino loyalty members return more than once a month. And I think that actually sounded kind of low to me because those loyalty cards, they say once they got you, they got you. And so I thought that was, less than half coming back twice a month. I thought was a little low. But yeah, let's talk about that reinvestment number. And it makes sense for it to be higher online, right? Because after a day of betting at the sports book, you just want to get out of there when your bets hit, right? You're not looking to stick around and make other bets. Basically, 77% of bettors at these tribal books reinvested their bet within 24 hours. Online, it's 94%. It's just an incredible churn rate for online. And again, part of me, I was sitting there thinking, well, it's, you're at the sports book. So if you have more bets that you wanted to get down for the next day or the day after that, why not do it while you're there before you leave? But and 77% is still a high number for reinvestment. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I thought it might have been a little bit bigger. They also give us 2023 sports betting information by handle and by total bets. And I don't think that anybody would be shocked to see that more than a third of all total bets in the U.S. last year through these tribal entities was on American football, 34%. But handle was basketball. 44% of all handle came on basketball. And that was only from 27% of the tickets. So that was a lower correlation there than I expected. Now, same game parlays, though. football is the favorite on same game parlays. And that just makes sense, right? That's the game that you're looking at where you have the most individual statistics, you have the most going on. You have the stoppages in play that really help if you're doing live same game parlays. So it doesn't shock me that it's 10% for football right now. Soccer's down there at 3%. Soccer's usually that sport that is leading that when we look at international parlay bets and all that kind of stuff. So interesting to see if we can get soccer growing a little bit more in America here over the next couple of years. I know that a lot of the European-based operators, and Camby is based out of Europe, they would love to see soccer take off because they have plenty of experience with that. And 90-minute game, plenty of opportunity in there for live betting. But yeah, this was a really interesting report about the state of tribal betting in the U.S.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that as we get more reports from the tribes, it gives us a bigger landscape as to what we can expect if other states like California eventually become legal, because the tribes will have, of course, a big hand in that. Matt, great stuff as always. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire.
Thanks, sir.
All right, Coach Young's up next. I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Well, it is Masters Week, and everyone from the PGA Tour and Live Golf are back family again. They are on the course, of course, at Augusta. Some of the big names, you know, is Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, the PGA Tour, John Rahm, and some others from Live Golf. But there still is no merger between the two, and I wonder if that's going to happen anytime soon. That's just one of the topics on Coast to Coast. Scott Farrell and Carver were wrapping it up about when this could potentially happen.
Your thoughts, again, Carver High, really quick on if they'll ever merge, because I've done stories and I've read stories. I did one today, in fact, saying this is no different than 20 years ago when Martha Burke was fighting for women to be members at Augusta. There was always some controversy around the Masters. This year, it's all the players are saying that they're losing fans. The game of golf is losing fans because of this war between Live and the PGA.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing to me, Scotty, that, and I've obviously Rory has talked about this week and in the last couple of weeks, but to have some of the Live guys talk about it this week, Bryson, Mickelson, Brooks, Rahm, all these guys start to talk about it, is kind of funny to me, obviously, because they're kind of the ones who left for the big bag first, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting that they're like, oh, this is not a good thing. We all got to get back together. This is all that I want. I want to be able to watch all the best golfers every week in the same place. I'm hoping, like the rest of them, that we do eventually get that, and I think we will. I don't think it's going to be as quick as some of these guys want it to be, but I do think, Scotty, it will happen. I think it makes next week and the four majors, when we get them together, a little bit extra juice, because we get to see these guys out there. And last year, remember, the Live guys were very good in those majors last year, especially the Masters and the PGA.
Look, I think the situation is impossible to see the best players in the world every week when you have two tours. Right. There's a PGA Tour, there's a Live Tour. So let's just hypothetically imagine that they're going to have two tours. What I want, because if you're gonna make all that money and you go to Live, you should get all that money and play for Live. There shouldn't be, I get both.
Coast to Coast coming up 3 o'clock Eastern today with more on the Masters as well as a preview of the National Championship. But I think the question that you have to ask yourself at this point, has the championship, at least for the time being, been overshadowed with this huge move in college basketball that gets John Calipari out of Kentucky and to Arkansas? I mean, is it fair to say, like a thief in the night? Kind of bizarre. 5-year deal, slightly lower money than Kentucky, but can pass that with incentives. Coach John Calipari, former coach, of course, in the NBA as well, leaves Kentucky to go to Arkansas. He took them to 4 Final Fours, by the way, in his time there, but he goes within the SEC, which is just not something you see a lot in college sports. A rival, by the way, in the old SEC, it was the SEC West, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi State, etc. But naturally, with the big stories kind of taken over college basketball today. All right, let's get to some more headlines here on the show. We'll hit on the big game tonight. Of course, UConn right now is 6.5-point favorites over Purdue and minus 300 on the money line. The total, by the way, in this is 145.5 as we head toward tonight's game, which, by the way, the tip-off will be at 9:20 p.m. Eastern time. So those of you who are planning on watching some college hoops, you're going to have to stay up pretty late to do it. Also, in addition, let's go through some of the numbers as far as the top performers right now in the NCAA tournament. And in the Huskies case, boy, they have some really, really strong performers at this point, whether it's Castle or Spencer. I mean, these guys are going to be on display. Castle's been the leading scorer right now in the Final Four over the weekend. He had 21 points and basically is going to be one of the key components to winning this game tonight and even potentially covering the spread. Their defense has also been really good. It was very good against Alabama over the weekend as well. As far as Purdue is concerned, you know where it starts and ends with Zach Edey, who he had 20 points over the weekend, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists. And if Edey has a big game tonight, that certainly will keep them in the game. But needless to say, Purdue has been somewhat of a surprise. They had an early exit in last year's NCAA tournament, but they have absolutely looked the part as they head toward the College Basketball National Championship tonight. We'll have that covered for you, by the way, on Game Time Decisions and in-game live as well. Now, in terms of the women, the college basketball season came to an end, and so did the career for Caitlin Clark. Unfortunately, it did not come with a win. South Carolina wins by a final of 87-75 in this game. They went undefeated over the course of the season. Maybe we shouldn't have been that surprised. Clark had a great start to this game, but unfortunately, one person just not enough to capture a national championship. And indeed, that was the end of the line. Now, what will be very curious is to see where Clark ends in the future, where she begins in the future, because there's some talk that she could not only go to the WNBA, but go to Ice Cube's league, this Big Three or whatever they're calling it, and could potentially play in 2 leagues as well. So for more on that and more college basketball news, notes, and information, and potentially some picks tonight, let's check in with our resident expert, Coach Young. He's back with us here on NewsWire to preview tonight's game and also recap what we saw last night. Coach, great to have you back here on this Monday. Thanks again for popping in.
Greg, I'm just waiting for some sleep. I've been going nonstop for about 4 weeks, but it's what a tremendous time of year with the NCAA championship game tonight between UConn and Purdue. But obviously, really quick, I have to give my flowers, my kudos to Caitlin Clark. What she has done for the women's game, women's sports, and in basketball in general, she's captivated this nation. And it's not just for women. It's for young girls. It's for men like you and me. It's for guys like us who have kids. You know, young boys are watching the game saying, I want to shoot like Caitlin Clark. So what she has done for sports is amazing. Craig, you know, you're a smart guy. I would say this. Caitlin Clark is going to be what the women's basketball and the NBA or WNBA, what I think Larry Bird was to the college game and how it transcended into the NBA with the ratings being up, with the games coming off of being on tape delay. I think Caitlin Clark going to the Indiana Fever today. I know there's talk about the Big Three, the Ice Cube League. I think Ice Cube was going to have it so that she could play in the WNBA, so they would try and make it work. I don't see how that happens. But also, this could mean a lot of money in the WNBA in regards to sponsors, TV revenue deals, which then could lead to more money for the players.
Now, I think that part of this, and again, Caitlin Clark has changed the game. I mean, she's changed sports, not only for the women, but for everybody in the world. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the champions in South Carolina. I mean, Coach, they went undefeated. Camila Cardoso was incredible. Let's focus on her here for a minute. What do you think her future looks like? Do you think that she gets picked very high in the WNBA draft? And you would know better than anyone. What kind of player can she be at the next level?
Well, I think one thing that was apparent is we talked a little bit about, Breanna Stewart, and then their little newscast they had like in ESPN about it's a struggle for these WNBA players that are young coming in from college. You even saw Leah Boston struggle a little bit. She's going to be a top 5 draft pick. Listen, she's big. She is a monster to deal with at 6'7" on the boards. She will be a top 5 draft pick. And really, I think you make a great point, Craig. Like, shout out to South Carolina. I mean, they lose 5 kids that go into WNBA draft. 5 new starters. You look at Malaysia Mallory, what she did. You look at Raven Johnson. You look at Tessa Johnson. Like, this is a whole new team that won a national championship. So, I think while they are the backstory, one of the big stories should be we now need to put Dawn Staley, Craig, as one of those all-time great women's basketball coaches with the Tara Vanderveers, with the Pat Summits, with the Gina Oriemas. 3 national championships, Craig. That's a big number in a women's game. And believe me, folks, with that whole team coming back, they're just getting started.
Yeah, no, it does appear to be the beginning of, I think, just some incredible basketball there with the Gamecocks. Okay, now let's move over to the main course, which is tonight. Although I think there's a chance that game last night may end up getting better ratings than tonight, but I guess that remains to be seen. UConn, 6.5-point favorites, coach, right now on FanDuel. I've been talking about this throughout the show. I've seen some 7. Minus 300 on the money line for Connecticut. My gosh, you would really be putting your neck out taking Purdue to win this game outright, but maybe you feel they will. They're plus 240. I've been anti-Purdue the whole way. I think I'm flipping, coach. I think because it's been so anticlimactic at this high level in the Final Four and even the Elite Eight, coach, I just want to see a good game tonight. Is that too much to ask? Can Purdue keep this close?
Well, listen, when you look at Purdue, for the most part, every time they play a game, they have the big fella, Zach Edey, inside, 7'4" monster. And they've always had the decided advantage. But tonight is one of those nights where they have the advantage. It's not a huge advantage. And if you even think about, pulling up like some of the player props here for like Zach Edey, his points and rebounds, it's less than the last game, right? If you look at Donovan Klingen's points props, they're less. Why? Those two may cancel each other out, 7-4 and 7-2. So how does Purdue win? Number one, they got to find a way to get Donovan Klingen in foul trouble. I think Dan Hurley is going to play him 1-on-1 straight up. 2, guard play, guard play, guard play. Smith, Jones, Lawyer, Gillis off the bench have to outplay Newton, Castle, Spencer, Diarra, and Caravan. I just don't see it happening, Craig. Maybe we get a close game, but I think UConn is just way too good, and unfortunately, this could be anticlimactic.
I would hate to see that for a championship game. Okay, we got about a minute to go, Coach. The Edey props, total points and rebounds sit at 36.5 on FanDuel. The Klingen props, total points and rebounds sit at 21.5 on FanDuel. Do you like a position either way, either player, over, under on either?
I would say mainly if I want to go over, under, I would go probably more Klingen. I think there's going to be a concerted effort, and this is the best defensive center in the nation, and Donovan Klingen, maybe besides Ryan Kalkbrenner. If people are looking at ways to make a little bit of money on the props, I would look at 2 people in the prop market for threes. Stephen Castle at minus 130 on FanDuel and make 1 3. Cam Spencer plus money, 3 plus threes. I think they're going to be able to score and score at will, and it could be the 3-point shot that propels Connecticut.
All right. Well, Coach, enjoy the game tonight. I know that you'll be watching, and you said, it's been another late night. I mean, Coach, 9:20 Eastern. Come on, man. This is asking a lot of people to stay up till midnight tonight, but I know you will. And we'll catch up again, talk some NBA playoffs next week. Thanks for coming on.
A lot of Starbucks today, a lot of Starbucks.
Could have went with Duncan. I don't know. All right, we'll be back to wrap it up next. Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get them at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Caitlin Clark has changed sports. She's changed the game. The only question is, what will she do for her next act, whether it has been commercials or playing at the highest level ever in the history of college basketball, men or women. She's obviously on to some spectacular things, but officially, the last time she wears an Iowa jersey officially in a game was last night. As you can see, she hung them up last night. The jersey's off, number 22. Two-time AP Player of the Year, three-time Big Ten Player of the Year. Unbelievable career, all-time leading scorer in the NCAA, most career points in NCAA tournament history, NIL deals with Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, 3,951 points. Big congrats as we put a bow on her career. And I have a feeling that we'll be talking more about her here on NewsWire as we head toward the WNBA draft and perhaps some future earnings coming for her as well. But no doubt she's changed the way that we look at sports. She's changed the way that we look at basketball. And I guess, for me, the only question is what comes next for Caitlin Clark. So congrats on a great career. All right, that will do it for our show today. Want to thank Jacob Kamaker for coming on from NewsWire, Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report, and Coach Young for previewing the game tonight. Also want to thank our associate producer, Frank, our producer, Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. Now, let me give you the schedule. Coming up next, we have the early line, which is followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast. So with sports betting's legalization in full swing, but the possibility of player props being thrown out in college basketball, this may be the final time that you're ever able to bet on a prop for college basketball. So you'll want to stay tuned because 3 o'clock Eastern, Scott Farrell, Carver and Company on Coast to Coast, they have a preview of everything, which includes Game Time Decisions and in-game live. So make sure you tune in then. I'll be back with you on tomorrow's edition of NewsWire right here at 11 a.m. Eastern as Masters Week for us officially gets underway. So all week long here on the show, we'll be giving out different positions, props, taking a look at everybody playing in the tournament as well. Can't wait to do it with you, but enjoy the game tonight. Final game of the college basketball season. We'll see what happens, and I'll tell you all about it tomorrow on NewsWire.